A while ago, there was a teaser for something that looked like a Pokemon fighting game during a Pokemon event in Japan. There was hype for it, but it subsided for a while. A year later, Pokken Tournament was announced for arcades in Japan, and later, after it came out in arcades, was announced for the Wii U. I was cautiously optimistic since on paper it sounds like a great idea. I mean, a Pokemon game made by veteran fighting game developers. What could possibly go wrong? Well, as I had seen before with Pokemon Conquest, you can take a great idea on paper and make it boring, dull, and forgettable. The Pokemon franchise has essentially become what the Digimon franchise was with video games about 10 years ago, with good ideas on paper being executed more poorly than the PlayStation Vita. There have been dungeon crawlers, tactical role-playing games, and now fighting games made with the Pokemon intellectual property that are dull, throwaway bargain bin trash riding on the name alone. But hey, maybe I'm wrong as usual, and Pokken Tournament really is the next big thing. Now, despite selling my Wii U, I still had a way of reviewing this game. I went to a Wii U owning friend's house and brought my laptop and set up my capture card. I then was able to play using his Wii U and copy of the game while recording it with my Lenovo ThinkPad W520. This way I was able to review the game despite selling my Wii U, which seems to make a better paperweight than a game console. So let's see what Pokken Tournament is all about first of all. Pokken Tournament is a fighting game that is based off the Pokemon franchise. Now, licensed material is nothing new for fighting game developers. Arc System Works developed Persona 4 Arena and Ultimax, NetherRealm developed Injustice, and Capcom developed quite a few fighting games based off JoJo, Marvel, and X-Men, with Marvel vs. Capcom being a successful series. In fact, Bandai Namco has also worked on an installment of the Super Smash Bros. Series. Usually when you make a game based off an established property, you have a vast amount of source material to draw from. In Pokemon's case, while it might not have much story content, it has tons and tons of characters. Pokemon X and Y contains 721 individual Pokemon, and this isn't counting Mega Evolutions or alternate forms. There are quite a few well-known Pokemon from both Generation 1 and later generations, along with countless legendary Pokemon that have appeared in numerous movies and others that have been popular with merchandising. This means that there are quite a few characters that could be added into Pokken Tournament. Considering that Bandai Namco made two fighting games with giant rosters on the Wii U already, which are Tekken Tag 2 and Smash 4, you would expect that Pokken would be the same way. Sadly, this isn't the case, as Pokken only features 16 playable characters with no plans to add more content. Quite a few fan-favorite Pokemon are missing. However, Pikachu and Mewtwo appear twice with different movesets and skins. Strangely enough, Greninja is missing despite their appearance in Smash 4. Other Pokemon show up as support characters only, and not as playable fighters. For comparison, Tekken Tag 2 featured 55 characters on disc, while Smash 4 features 51 characters on disc. To make matters worse, Pokken Tournament currently has no plans for DLC and is right now a full $60 game. Tekken Tag 2 is around $23 used on the Wii U, while Smash 4 is $40 used despite the Nintendo tax. This means that Pokken feels light on content even when compared to other fighters from the same developer on the same platform. Let's talk about Pokken's gameplay now. Pokken tries to put a spin on the fighting game formula by having two distinct camera modes. One where your character has movement free in an enclosed circle with a more dynamic camera similar to that of the Naruto fighting games, and another where the camera features the traditional fighting game angle. Gameplay is quite similar, however, in both modes. From what I played of it, it features kiddie pool deep gameplay involving mashing buttons over and over again. Sure, I didn't play too much of it, but then again, even in games like Tekken, it's harder to double perfect enemies in the first or second stage than it is in Pokken. And if you remember Tekken 4 where you could pin enemies against the wall and just beat the shit out of them, you can do that in Pokken 2 as well. Pokken continues the Nintendo tradition of doing something in the most special snowflakey way possible instead of just doing it normally. Character selection is done by going into a menu and changing your Pokemon, while in other games you choose it when you start the mode. There's also no arcade mode, instead there's a generic league mode and a million practice modes, along with an online multiplayer mode which I did not play. The special snowflake design choices can even be confusing to someone who's used to fighting games such as Smash Brothers, which are on the same system, and I genuinely wonder what went through the minds of the developers of this game when they decided to implement it. I'm not a fan of how the gameplay in Pokken transitions between two camera angles. Instead of just sticking with one gameplay style and perfecting it until it was done right, they went with a mix of two camera angles, and this means that the gameplay keeps switching around between the close-up angle, which is used in Tekken, and the far-away angle used in the Naruto games. This can be awkward considering how quickly it happens. Graphically, the game is a very mixed bag. The game is downgraded from the released arcade screenshots, and it really shows in the quality of the rendering. There are now more jaggies along with some weird upscaling filter on the screen, which can best be seen on a good display. Lots and lots of detail was put into the Pokemon models, and these are the most detailed Pokemon models of any Pokemon game. These aren't reused models like quite a few other Pokemon games have used in the past. These are new and original models. Maybe they're a bit too detailed, however. The backgrounds, on the other hand, are a stark contrast to the models. They're static with little detail made worse by the poor rendering quality of Pokken. Sometimes the lighting is good, but then again, even some Wii games had lighting of similar quality. And I also noticed that some of the graphical effects that are seen in games such as Tekken Tag 2 were missing too, such as the motion blur that the characters have. The graphical quality is likely due to the poor hardware inside the Wii U, and while the downgrade of Pokken from what I see isn't Sonic Boom dramatic, it's still a far cry from the Nintendo E3 2011 Garden demo, or quite a few Xbox One and PS4 games. If anything, this game looks more or less like an Xbox 360 port of a PC game, or like Halo 3 where there are these high quality assets buried under blur. Halo 3 did have a much better art direction than Pokken Tournament though. Now, Pokken Tournament runs at 60 frames per second. With one player, Pokken is mirrored across the Wii U gamepad and the TV. The game can only hit 60 frames per second though with one player on the console, as the game drops to 30 frames per second with two players unless you use System Link, which requires two consoles, two copies of the game, and of course two controllers. To do a two-player match on the same system, one player must use the Wii U gamepad, while the other player can use any controller they like, including the now Nintendo taxed game-specific Pokken controller that, as usual, is out of stock everywhere. And yes, they made a controller that only works with Pokken for some stupid reason. You can't use it with Tekken Tag 2, or Injustice, or Smash Brothers, or any other fighting game on the Wii U system. Now sure, you can plug the Pokken controller into your computer and use it as a fighting game controller or emulator controller or whatever. But here's the thing, with the Nintendo tax in full effect for the Pokken controller right now, it's just not worth paying an over-the-top price just for a few emulators. All in all though, the worst part about Pokken is that it's just boring. In fact, the person whose Wii U I play commented that I just, quote, wasn't feeling it, and that I looked out of it. Which is true. The game is so boring it might as well make you go to sleep and want to do homework instead. Please, save your money and get the real thing like Tekken instead. Other fighters do nearly everything better, from modes to characters to actually being fun. However, if you're a Pokemon fan whose only criteria for games happens to be this game has Pokemon in it, if you only play games in the Mushroom Kingdom, or if you're one of those people who got made fun of at the lunch table for playing Pokemon when everyone else moved on to different games, then go ahead and buy this game. Otherwise, stay far away from this game and as far away as possible. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more, and please, play fighting games that are actually good instead of this garbage.
Hey, have you heard about Amiibo? I hear if you touch them to your gamepad, you can get some presents or something.